Thank you very much. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome back to those who've attended a couple of our presentations. This is the 2026 ARCA Virtual Learning Institute, and we're in our third week. We have one more week after today. All our presentations are being recorded, so if you missed something and want to go back and review it, they will be up through July 15th. So very excited to have you here. And we're really thrilled to have today's topic, neuroaffirming practices in mental health counseling, practical skills for working with autistic clients. That is presented by Emily Walsh, who is an autistic adult and licensed professional counselor associate in South Carolina. She specializes in mental health therapy for autistic and otherwise neurodivergent adults. Additionally, she runs the Autism Social Spectrum of Columbia, a monthly social hangout group for autistic adults. She has worked in the autism community since 2013, teaching autistic individuals life skills, presenting across the country at conferences on her experience as an autistic adult and topics related to autism and independent living. And she has also participated in multiple committees, councils, advocating for the needs of the disability community. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we do ask that folks please keep your mics muted throughout. Um, Emily will be taking questions at the end. And so if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to those in the last 10 or so minutes of our presentation. Um, we really want to thank Emily for being here to present on such an important topic and from a lived experience, not only professionally, but also personally. And so, with that, Ms. Walsh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me here today. Alrighty, guys. It's so I'm so glad to be here. And thank you all for joining us today. So I am presenting on neuroaffirming practices in mental health counseling, specifically practical skills for working with autistic clients. Um, I am going to, let's see here, go to my next slide. There we go. Um, like you guys already heard, I am an autistic adult, and then I do have ADHD and OCD, and we'll talk a little bit later why those additions can be helpful to know about. But I also am a licensed professional counselor associate in South Carolina. Specifically focused on mental health counseling for autistic adults and adults with ADHD, although I do work with other types of neurodivergence like OCD. Um, and I also work with a lot of late diagnosed adults. I don't see as many people who were diagnosed as children coming, and I don't do very much work at all with children. Um, so our learning objectives for today. So by the end of this presentation, participants will be able to define neuroaffirming practice and distinguish it from a deficits-based approach, and identify common barriers autistic clients may face in traditional counseling settings. And I just realized that I didn't start my timer, and I need that to be able to make sure that I stay on time. So let me get that going. There we go. Okay. They will also be able to demonstrate at least 3 in-session strategies. You'll learn a lot more than just 3, but to support communication, emotional regulation, and client autonomy. And 4, modify therapeutic techniques to align with autistic cognitive and sensory styles. Alrighty, and I am just reminded by my image in the top right-hand corner that I did not provide any image descriptions, and so I'd like to take a moment and apologize for that. So, on this slide, in the top right-hand corner is an image. It's a graphic of a blue puzzle piece, and often, well, I'll get into why I have that puzzle piece there in a moment, but the title of this slide is Deficit-Based Approach. Historically, interventions have focused on curing or normalizing the disabled person to make them more like an able, typical individual, contributing to stigma and masking behaviors. And this is a quote from a study, Wire 2022. Essentially, when folks first started working in the mental health field with autistic individuals, it was from a deficit-based approach. And this deficit-based approach was focused on curing and normalizing. And so there has been a lot of discussion, arguments in the autism community, and even greater in the disability community about what symbols should represent us. And so the blue puzzle piece has been used in the past to symbolize autism. And a lot of autistic advocates, myself included, do not agree with this being a symbol used to represent us because it can sometimes be used to represent how autistic individuals are perceived as puzzling to other people, or that we have a missing piece to us that other people are trying to figure out. And that is how many autistic individuals do not want to be viewed as or perceived as. And so the common goals under a deficit-based approach include improving perceived social deficits, minimizing repetitive behaviors, and encouraging neurotypical communication styles. And what we have seen over the years in research is that these type of goals have led to masking behaviors, which we will cover, I believe, in the next like 2 slides. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so meet you to the next slide. So the alternative is, if we're not going to look at things through a lens of deficits, what should we do? And that is, well, we should have a neuroaffirming this or a neuroaffirming approach. And this slide has in the bottom right-hand corner an infinity symbol that is rainbow colored. Now, at the very beginning of my presentation, there was an infinity symbol that was gold. That infinity symbol is used to symbolize autism, specifically the gold one, because the element symbol for on the periodic table of elements for gold is AU. And so AU being the first 2 letters of the word autism, that's the reasoning behind it. The rainbow for this infinity symbol represents neurodiversity in general, because it is a spectrum. So neurodiversity as a term itself covers minds that are not neurotypical. So they differ from what the average population has. So that's where it includes things like autism, ADHD, OCD, Tourette's, Down syndrome, other genetic disorders that affect the brain, those sorts of things. So when we have a neuroaffirming practice or an approach, we are supporting our clients in ways that respect and affirm their neurotype. So how their brain works, we are supporting them with respect and affirming that. There's a quote on here that says, diversity of minds and brains should be valued, and individuals with neurological disabilities should be accepted for who they are. And so that's the basis behind this type of approach is not that the individual needs to be fixed, but that we should understand that there are some disabilities that they are what they are, and we can accommodate, we can help them live lives that they want to live. But if we try to change parts of them that are unchangeable, then we're just going to create more frustration for those clients themselves. And really, we would just be doing harm. And so curing or normalizing the disabled person should not be goals. And both of those quotes are from Dwyer 2022. So on this next slide, I just wanted to define two key terms. So the slide has two different definitions, and each definition matches with an image. And the first image is of the masks that are often it often goes along with like theater or like drama. And the term is masking. So masking is defined as suppressing natural behaviors to appear neurotypical. This is often a term used in the autistic community when an autistic person will attempt to appear holistic or neurotypical so that they can fit in, so that they can get a job, make friends, please the people around them. Problem is that often leads to burnout. Burnout is the second term, and the image that goes along with that is a icon of a person on their hands and knees with their head dropped and a little spiral coming up from their head where they look very like exhausted, exasperated. And the definition for burnout is pervasive, long-term, typically 3+ months, exhaustion, loss of function, and reduced tolerance to stimulus, resulting from chronic life stress and a mismatch of expectations and abilities without adequate supports. And that definition is from Raymaker 2020. So these definitions or terms will be helpful as we move forward, but these are two things that can occur when we try to treat people, autistic individuals, from a deficits-based approach. And oftentimes when I see people come into my office and as new clients, they either have never sought out professional counseling, or if they have, and it hasn't gone well. And maybe the therapist has taken more, previous therapist has taken more of a deficits approach, or maybe just not understood aspects of their autism. And they come in to a place where they are really burnt out and they are heavily masking. And so when you get folks in your office or that come into your life, they might already be in a state like this. And so I think it's important to be aware of what those look like. So some of the barriers that autistic individuals can face in mental health counseling. There are 6 different, I guess, of information on this PowerPoint slide. Each one has a corresponding image. So starting in the top left side, there is communication, and along with that is a white conversation bubble. In the middle, it says executive functioning, and there is an image of a clock. On the right, it says masking, and then there's that same drama masks image. Below that, there is an image of a house that has like a red roof and a brown front door. It's like a cartoon picture of a house. And it says generalizing strategies. And to the right of, or to the left of me, it says processing time. And there is a cartoon drawing of a person sitting on a stool that looks very contemplative. They're thinking through something, processing something. And then to the left of is sensory processing and an image of a circle with different colors with little squares that have an eye, an ear, nose, mouth, and a hand, each representing the different senses that people have. And so as we continue on in this presentation, we'll cover some different barriers that some autistic clients may face when they come to therapy. And then further on, we'll talk about what we can do about those barriers. So one of the first barriers, and sometimes the biggest barrier, is communication. So this slide has that same conversation bubble on it. And there are two quotes from Mazurek for 2023. The first quote is, verbal communication expectations make therapy difficult, and many autistic individuals report having trouble talking about feelings. So well, let me back up. Autism primarily could be described as a disability affecting communication. And so when folks come to therapy, and therapy is mental health therapy, at least, often is a type of therapy that is very heavy in talking. And I mean, I guess unless you're doing like art therapy or equine therapy, but there is a lot of talking oftentimes. And so if someone already struggles with communication because of autism or co-occurring condition related to their autism, so maybe they have a form of apraxia that developed from a genetic condition that also caused their autism, that could impact their experience in therapy. And so we have to understand as the therapist that sometimes the silence or the pause before they say something or not answering a question isn't what it seems. It might not be them trying to be difficult. It might not be avoidance. It might not be them not wanting to be there. There could be so many other things going on. And so that's where we have to play detective and figure out what's going on. I had one client who, the first few sessions, we sat in silence and it was uncomfortable. And he was an adult at the time of me meeting with him, but his mom had explained to me that he didn't learn to speak till he was 6, verbally, didn't learn to speak verbally until he was 6. And so it was uncomfortable for me at first because I was questioning, am I doing something wrong? Am I just not understanding something? Does he just not want to be here? And it took the time of me showing up and just getting comfortable being uncomfortable and showing him that I was willing to sit in that discomfort, that he was worth sitting in that discomfort, that slowly but surely he started opening up. And it really was he needed longer than maybe some of my other clients' time to process what I was saying and then also think about a response. And he needed time to feel safe enough. And then because of the speech difficulty that he had, there were some different approaches that I had to take. And so I had to learn to say things and ask questions in a specific way so that he would understand it and be able to answer or respond. And it was really interesting. And we worked together for about 2 years. And at one point, he said to me, thank you for taking the time. And that meant a lot to me. And so when it comes to the communication, it's important to look at all of the reasons that someone might not be saying much in therapy when they first come to us. So our next barrier is executive functioning. So there's the same clock icon as well. So we have 3 bullet points here. The first one says difficulty focusing during therapeutic activities such as mindfulness, meditation. difficulty implementing strategies without a support person, and logistical barriers with scheduling slash time management. So, um, one of the barriers that some of my clients face in therapy, especially when they come in for issues related to anxiety, is, oh, well, meditation doesn't work for me, or mindfulness doesn't work for me. And it's because they've been taught that they have to completely clear their mind. Um, and if they have ADHD, that's really difficult to do. And so, um, in areas like that, we focus instead on finding things in the moment to focus on instead of trying to push everything away, finding something to bring our focus to. And oftentimes they have more success that way. Um, if you have someone in your session that does keep losing focus, um, having an activity or something for them to be doing, maybe with their hands, can be really helpful. So I keep little like craft kits that I got from like Dollar Tree in my office. And sometimes my clients will like do those while we're talking about other stuff. And it's not even like a therapy thing. It's they just need something to do with their hands. Um, Difficulty implementing strategies without a support person. So we'll touch on that a little bit more too when we get to generalizing strategies, but sometimes when there is uh, the client may intellectually understand whatever it is you're working on, but then they try to take that and go to implement it. If they're having a hard time with behavioral activation at home, because of issues with executive functioning, then they may need somebody else to come in and support them. And so that's where talking about, well, how can we ask for support? How can we pull in a family member, a friend? Um, or if it's they get distracted midway through the task, what could we do? And really working through how can we use the natural supports that are already in their life to help them follow through with whatever their goals are. So support the support people in their life can be really helpful with executive dysfunction and making it more functional. And then logistical barriers with scheduling and time management. Um, a lot of my clients, because they have ADHD also, they get really embarrassed about being late to appointments or um, accidentally missing appointments. And we're just trying to like figure out when they could even have their next appointment. And so I do work towards being more flexible and understanding while still holding certain boundaries. And so it depends on the client and what our goals are. But that is an open conversation, an ongoing conversation that I have with clients about like what our expectations are and our goals. And, if we're actively working on time management, then that's a great place to practice it. Let's try to show up to therapy on time. Yes, but that sometimes can be a barrier because they may have faced other therapists where, oh, you were 15 minutes late 3 times, so you get kicked out of the practice. So for some folks, that has been a barrier in the past. Masking as the next barrier. So there's this same graphic of the drama faces, or drama masks. There's 2 bullet points. The first says autistic clients may suppress or camouflage their authentic thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and support needs in session. When autistic clients feel unable to mask, let me start over. When autistic clients feel unable to unmask in therapy, treatment may remain surface level, limiting trust, self-expression, and meaningful progress. So therapeutic alliance is so important, obviously, with our clients. But I think it's an important reminder that it is also very important with our autistic clients as well. it would probably not be surprising to anyone to hear that a lot of our autistic clients are going to come in already with their masks on. And so that can present problems because if we're not aware of it, when they come in, if they're not showing their authentic thoughts, their authentic emotions, behaviors, what they actually truly need in session, we may not interpret them properly, but then also they're not going to get what they need. And so if they're not getting what they need and we're not understanding what they need, then that's going to make therapy really difficult. And so if that's happening, then oftentimes it does remain surface level and it's difficult to build any sort of trust there and for them to really truly express themselves and have meaningful growth. And I feel like I'm going to stop saying it, but I feel like I keep saying this, that we'll get to it further along, but that's why it's so important for us to show up authentically ourselves in therapy, appropriately, of course, but like showing that we care about our clients and validating their experiences and um, doing our best to connect with them because they're another human and we care about them. Um, because those are the things that are going to help them drop the mask when we show up for them. Okay, the next barrier is sensory processing. So we have the graphic with the different icons for the five senses. We have two bullets. The first one says autistic clients can have overwhelming experiences from the time they walk into the office until the time that they leave. And the following bullet, sorry, I'm trying to get my papers in order. There we go. The following bullet has examples. So examples, fluorescent lights, plugins, candles, perfumes of staff/other clients, volume of background music, visual stimuli, inside office or outside windows. Visual stimuli inside office or outside windows. So for a lot of autistic individuals, they can be sensitive to, like hypersensitive to certain sensory stimuli. And so thinking about whatever space you may have from the time that the client walked in, what is that sensory experience like for them? There may be things that you could adjust. There may be things that are happening that you've never thought of, that you didn't realize that could be a problem. Because there are a lot of variabilities. And that's where that relationship comes in. Because if a client can feel comfortable enough to say, hey, it does actually bother me, can we change that? Then you would be able to know too. And that's a really beautiful thing when it does happen. But doing what you can do to help their nervous system calm down, because it's really, really hard to engage in therapy when all you can hear is the ticking of the clock. I remember when I was getting my autism testing actually done at 19. I want to say I only made it like 10 minutes into the assessments where we're doing the diagnostic interview, and they had a clock on the wall. It's ticking. And I told them, I said, we are not going to be able to do this if you keep this clock in here. Like, you have to get rid of the clock. It was something about the repetitiveness of the sound that it was all I could think about. And so I was trying to answer their questions, but I was really only able to access like half of my brain because the other half was listening to that clock. And so little things like that. And so my clients know that they can change stuff. They don't, I mean, I appreciate the heads up, but for the most part, I tell them just do what you need to do. So I have one client that we have a TV that plays soft music in the waiting room, but we leave the remote on the table. And so when he comes in, he doesn't like to hear music, even though it's classical music. He just doesn't like to hear it. And so he comes in and he turns the TV off. And when he goes to leave, he turns it back on. So he's very polite about it. I have another client that doesn't like the bubble tube in my office. And so when he comes in, he asks me to turn it off. I have other clients that I removed one of the stuffed animals that I have on my couch, and they were like, "Where did it go? Like, I need that one here." And I was like, "Oh, too easy. Like, let me bring it back," because they found the texture very soothing. And so, um, having sensory things either that are calming in your office or taking out things that can be overwhelming can be really helpful. Uh, see here. So, processing time can be a huge, huge barrier. So, like I talked about in that story, oh, let me do my pictures first. So, I have the image of the person. He appears to be a little guy with a purple shirt and brown pants and black shoes sitting on a small brown stool with black hair that blends into the background of my black presentation, but his hair does anyway. He looks very contemplative because he's processing. And so there's two bullets here. And the first one says autistic clients may need additional time to interpret questions, identify emotions, organize thoughts, and formulate responses. The second one says fast paced conversations or frequent interruptions may increase stress, reduce participation, and lead clients to appear disengaged or unresponsive when they are actively processing information. This is pretty much exactly like the one client that I had talked about. He needs time. And so when I ask a question, I usually wait a full 2 minutes of in silence with him, 2 years later, before I ask if I need to repeat it or if I need to ask it differently. And he just lets me know if I need to do it differently. For him specifically, he finds questions very difficult to answer and prefers statements. So I just ask my questions in a way that I just ask them in a way that either he'll agree with or he'll disagree with. And either way is fine because if it's wrong, he'll correct me. If it's right, he'll agree and say more. So he's not the kind of person that'll just say yes and then not say. So it works out great. But I have some clients that if we're doing something like taking an assessment, they would prefer it to be an assessment that's online that they can do on their own time at home because they don't want to sit and do an assessment that would take maybe somebody that doesn't have autism 5 minutes, but for them it would take the whole session, and well, there goes their therapy for the week and spent just doing one assessment. So they would rather get it like electronically and where through one of the online systems where they could just do it. So just being aware that for some folks they may need more time to do this. Generalizing skills can be a big barrier. So sometimes it'll seem like autistic folks may not be making as much progress because they're struggling to generalize the skills, and they may not even realize that that's happening. Online or on this slide is the same image of the house, and there's a bullet with a quote that says, Azaric et al. 2023 discovered many tended to forget to use the strategies learned in therapy in daily life. And the second bullet says difficulties generalizing skills due to lack of executive functioning skills due to difficulty generalizing with environmental changes and due to difficulty accessing skills during crisis. So a lot of my clients, when I first started working, or when I first graduated and got my LPCA and started working in private practice, I was like confused. I'm like, why are they not using their skills that we're working on? Like in session, they do great. And then they go home and they're not using them. And I couldn't figure it out. And that's when I realized it was the generalizing piece. And so it can be helpful to look at executive functioning and how they're doing or how well they're not doing in that area, and also their environment. And so talking them through, well, what situations would you use these skills in, like hypotheticals, Um, but also looking at if this is a skill, like, oh, I'm starting to feel anxious. When do I know to use this skill? Some of my clients were wanting to use deep breathing when they're like mid crisis level, full blown panic attack. And it's like at that point, you need to go put your face in some cold water, not take a handful of deep breaths. Like the skills were not compatible with the level of distress. And so a lot of autistic individuals struggle with what's called interoception. And if you had time, I would have added more slides, but unfortunately we don't. And so they may not know when, like in the moment, when they are upset until it gets really, really bad. So some autistic clients may not eat until they're starving or may not go to the bathroom until they are literally about to use the restroom on themselves. And so the same thing applies to emotions. So they may not realize that they're angry until they're about to like punch someone in the face, or they may not realize that they're very, very sad until they're full on sobbing. And so one of the things that we work on early on is building those interoception um, skills so that they can then be able to know what skills to use when. And then oftentimes because of that, I start with the crisis skills first, because if they're not realizing until their crisis level, then we're wasting time with the basic skills for lower levels of distress. Like we might as well just address the top ones so that they at least have what they need in the meantime until we can start getting them to the lower levels. Okay, now on to the fun part. Not that this isn't all fun. So, okay, doing good on time. Um, Sweet. So this is the part that I have the in-session skills. So these are things where I'm going to tell you like cool things that you can do to support working with autistic individuals in your sessions. So you can use, let me start again. In-session skills, communication strategies is the title of this slide. You can use clear, direct, literal language. A lot of individuals with autism can struggle with metaphors, can struggle with like slang or maybe certain phrases like, oh, it's raining cats and dogs. Um, it's not always that black and white. Like they may know that it's not actually raining cats and dogs, but it can still just be distracting. Um, Avoid implied meaning metaphors. I put in parentheses here though, or explain them explicitly. And it also depends on your client. So I have one client that when it comes to more abstract concepts of things, they need metaphors. But the metaphors often come with lots of images, lots of drawings, and we are also verbally going through direct connections. So it's not me just saying, oh, life is like a box of chocolates, and then we move on. No, like I'm literally going through every single piece of the metaphor with it. Um, Allow extra processing time to accommodate differences in cognitive processing speed. Offer alternative communication methods. And so that could be writing, typing, drawing, using a whiteboard. Incorporate art into sessions. I love a good collage. That's great for communicating emotions. Um, and that same study, the Mazurek et al. 2023. That study is really cool. If you have time, you should totally go and read the whole thing. They polled a bunch of, or surveyed a bunch of autistic individuals about what aspects of therapy were really helpful and which ones were not. And one of the things that they found was that incorporating art and creativity in sessions was very, very helpful to a lot of autistic individuals. In session skills for emotional regulation support. A lot of autistic individuals struggle with emotional regulation. Um, my hypothesis is because of that, the problems with interoception. And also, I don't know that we teach autistic kids how to properly process, like identify and process their emotions in a way that works for their neurotype. But again, that's a presentation for another day. So the suggestions here are to use visual supports, and I will give an example of that on the next 3 slides. Identify sensory contributors to distress, slow paced. Well, actually, let me back up. I want to talk. Identify sensory contributors to distress. So, we talked in the barriers about how uh, sensory processing can impact like concentration and ability to participate in session. Also, can greatly impact emotional regulation. I don't know if you've ever maybe tried clothes on and you go to try clothes on that are just maybe a size too small or maybe 2 sizes too small. So if you have, or if you haven't, maybe you can imagine it's a very uncomfortable experience. So I now want you to imagine that you're wearing clothes that are 2 sizes too small and then having to like go throughout your day and like get stuff done. And every move you make, it's like a reminder that all the clothes that you're wearing are just a little bit too small. And how frustrated by the end of the day that you would be, and how irritable, snappy you might be. That sometimes is what it's a similar feeling to what having like the buildup that can come from different sensory experiences and how that can impact emotional regulation is it's not always just one little thing, but all of the little things throughout the day that could add up. So it could be the hum of the refrigerated section at Publix. It could be the car alarm going off in your apartment complex at night that, drove you up the wall. It could be leaving your GameCube turned on, but you didn't realize it. And so there's this high pitch going through your house all day, but you didn't know about it. And you were super, super upset until you finally figured out what it was. And that's a real life example of me yesterday. And then I turned it off and I was like, oh my God, I can breathe again now. So there are lots of things that can really build up. And so you can learn to accommodate these things. You can turn off a GameCube, you can leave Publix. So sometimes emotional regulation for autistic people is as simple as let's accommodate the sensory differences. So those are actually really easy things to accommodate sometimes or to learn. So the same study, what was it? Started with the M, Missouri. They said that slow-paced diaphragmatic breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and mindful meditation were all 4 of those were, I guess it's 3. All 3 of those were identified as really helpful in teaching emotional regulation to autistic individuals. And I also put them in here because those are all things that I have also noticed are very helpful to all of my clients and myself included. When teaching the breathing and the progressive muscle relaxation, those are things that need to be very explicitly taught. So I don't mean take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out. I mean, take a deep breath in until your belly feels really full, until the skin on your stomach feels tight. Take a deep breath out until your lungs feel like there's no more air in them, until it feels like you can't push anything else out. Like very, very descriptive. Because there is that disconnect for some autistic individuals of their like mind and body. Again, the interoception stuff. That also is there's another sense. Okay, I'm getting off topic. But it's helpful if you can go into more detail with progressive muscle relaxation. It can be really helpful to give examples on how to actually tighten each muscle group and show them in session, and also check and make sure that they are feeling the muscles tighten. Um, for some autistic individuals, they can have like joint hypermobility, and so they may not feel their muscles tighten in the same way. And so you may have to come up with other ways for them to be able to tighten the muscles. And so it's just important to check in. So these are not exercises that you would want to just assign them to do on their own at home, because you may end up just frustrating them more. So like do those in session with them. I like to go over them first, then do them together with them, then let them do them by themselves, but in the room with me. So with me instructing and them doing it, and then they go and do it for home. And then lastly, the last big bullet point is DBT, dialectical behavioral or behavior therapy. Specifically, the distress tolerance, emotional regulation, and mindfulness modules are really, really great for emotional regulation for autistic individuals because they're so detailed and they explain things in a very like literal, concrete way. And so a lot of the autistic clients that I have, it just makes sense for them. So let me move on. So this is the visual support, well, part of one of the visual supports that I wanted to show you. So on the screen, and I'm going to read my image description. And so this is an outline of a person with 6 empty colored rectangles around it. And this is from the Language Disorder Australia's website. It's their body clues. I think they might even call it like emotion body clues. Workbook resource. I don't know. It's free on their website. It's in the resources and cited, so you'll have access to that if you grab a copy of the presentation. But what I have clients do is on the next two slides, I'll show you what the little pieces look like. But essentially, I print this page out for the client. And then I also have the little pieces on the next two slides. And in session, we put the pieces where the client is feeling the different things. And the colors correspond. So it'll make more sense when I show you the next two slides. So for this slide, we have, there are 4 categories. There is the brain, face, voice, and chest. In the brain category, it lists responses of thinking clearly, headaches, can't think clearly, act before thinking it through, head feels like it is exploding and can't focus. In the face category, it lists smiling, hot, clenched teeth, crying, sweating, and tight forehead. In the voice category, it lists talking calmly, can't speak, shouting, talking lots, voice shaking, and speak without thinking. In the chest category, it lists heart beating calmly, heart beating fast, tight chest, heart feels heavy, breathing fast, and can't breathe. And so what they would do is they would take each one that goes into the corresponding category and they would place it on their little worksheet. And this I would use either in the moment with them, how are you feeling? Let's identify it, or when you were experiencing whatever said situation was that we're looking at, what did you feel? And then this is the other half of the worksheet, and it says, in the body category, it lists relaxed, goosebumps, shaking, feeling sick, frozen in place, and has butterflies. In the hands category, it lists calm and still, clenched fists, sweaty, fidgety, and biting nails. In the muscles category, it lists relaxed, tense/tight, slouches, and energetic. In the category, it lists needs the toilet, dry mouth, tight/lump in throat, want to run, to hit something and feeling tired. So um, this is just a great visual to use for emotional regulation and identifying emotions. For a lot of autistic individuals, if you just ask them, hey, what are you feeling? You're going to get, I don't know, or nothing. So having examples and pictures and then an activity where they're putting it on something is very, very helpful. All right, sensory adjustments. This slide says in session skills, sensory and environmental adjustments. So we have low lighting, minimal noise, no big light, provide or allow fidget tools, freedom for movement, consider fragrance-free policy, notice and bring awareness to motor stereotypies in session, because if somebody is participating in more, that could mean something like agitation or anxiety. I'm going to go super fast because I realized that I didn't do my timer right and we're supposed to be doing questions now. So, but I can go fast. This is a picture of my office. You will notice the big light is not on. I have two lamps. I have natural light. I have a bubble tube. I have a cool squishmallow. There is a bucket of fidgets that clients have access to. So this is an example essentially for you to look at. When working with clients, we want to prioritize their well-being, identity, and self-defined goals over normalizing or trying to get them to act neurotypical. We want to collaboratively set goals and offer structure through choices throughout sessions, and normalize autonomy and boundaries by encouraging clients to say no, request accommodations, take breaks, and provide corrective feedback. Modifying CBT. CBT works great for a lot of clients, but it can be really helpful to provide structure and predictability through agendas, written summaries, visual supports, routine check-ins, allow extra processing time, and avoid pressure for immediate verbal responses. Avoid goals centered on appearing neurotypical. Use graphics and visuals to describe emotions, include sensory regulation, energy accounting, and recovery planning alongside cognitive strategies. Distinguish between anxiety-driven thoughts and valid autistic experiences. So examples are sensory overload, social fatigue, misunderstandings by others. This one's really important. There's a big difference between thought like it's too loud in here when like you're at a concert versus I'm trapped in here and there's nothing I can do. And so it makes a difference which one you focus on. Modify exposure work so it does not encourage enduring overwhelming sensory or social experiences without accommodations, and also small steps because we don't want to overwhelm their nervous system. Autistic individuals tend to be very, very sensitive to the environment. There's a lot of reasons why, but that doesn't matter for today. Rethink social skills training. We want to clarify why learning social skills might be important to the client. Autistic communication is not bad, but it might not be the right language for an environment. And so we want to focus on social skills instruction that emphasizes, I'm so sorry, hang on. Social skills instruction that emphasizes conformity over authenticity may promote masking and increase risk of burnout. There's a super great resource called Peers for Young Adults. Their videos, the link is in the resources, are really great. I don't love all of their curriculum, but a lot of it is really great. I essentially teach social skills as if it's learning a second language. We don't want to use that language necessarily all of the time. We can't make it our first language. You know, that's whatever you were born and first learned to speak. But you can use that language when you need to if you learn it. That leads us to the double empathy problem, which is autistic minds experience the world one way, holistic minds experience it another way. when an autistic person and a neurotypical or holistic person interact, sometimes there are difficulties or like a language cultural barrier. And oftentimes, those differences are blamed on the perceived deficiencies of the autistic individual. And we call this the double empathy problem. There's a really great graphic that I found. Empathy is a two-way street. However, because holistic culture is dominant, it's often seen as the norm and therefore considered the right way. Those who deviate from this norm are frequently viewed as deficient. So, this is going back to that deficits based versus neuroaffirming approach. Um, so, autistic communication is valid, it's just different than holistic communication. Both parties still need to put effort into communicating and understanding each other. Last important slide is using special interests therapeutically. We can use discussions of interest to support rapport building, identify strengths associated with the interest, such as attention to detail, persistence, creativity, or expertise, and explore how the interest can be used to build community connection or vocational opportunities. On here, I have 3 graphics that are one of a yellow bicycle, one of boxing gloves, and one of a triangle sign, or not triangle, diamond sign that says gamer zone with a gaming controller on it. And those are examples of special interests. There's another quote from this study that says, feeling heard, accepted, and validated was the most essential element of the therapy experience. And I just really like that quote. Now, we're on to the questions portion. Sorry, we do not have much time.
Well, Emily, thank you. We do have a few points in here. One person, Heather, said in terms of when you were chatting about fidgets and whatnot, rubber textured worry stones and fidgets are great and easy to clean, which I think is an important part of that.
I agree.
And then we do have a question. Jennifer asks about references that you would recommend to learn a little bit more about that interoception that you've been talking about.
Yes. I don't know that I would be able to give you any right off the top of my head. I've learned a lot about that through some different occupational therapists. But Heather, my email is currently on the screen. It's Emily Walsh counselor at gmail.com. If you want to shoot me an email, I'd be more than happy to send you them. I just wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head. I honestly didn't plan to go much into interoception, but that is one of my personal special interests that I do also like to talk about.
We'll have to invite you back to do a presentation just on that at some point.
I know, right?
Uh, well, I appreciated, Emily, you bringing in the infinity symbol. And we get stuck into the discourse that we see all the time and recognizing that the puzzle is not always the right course. It may be okay for some families and autistic folks, but not for everybody. So
Yes,
recognizing that and honoring that diversity of the autism spectrum. And I also was really appreciated the bringing your authentic self into the session. I can remember a counselor coming in a clinic I worked at and told his client, I'm so mashugana right now. He came in a hurry and he was feeling just out of sorts. And the session was one of the best sessions ever because he was authentic in that moment, saying, I need a moment to pull myself together. And they were really there. So I, those pieces really stuck out to me, and I appreciate that.
absolutely. One of the best sessions I ever had was I said something and did not come out the way that I had meant it to, and I had to pause and apologize to the client. And the next session, I still just was still tearing me up that I had made a mistake, and I brought it up again. And the client said that it meant so much to her because no one had ever apologized to her before for making a mistake. And so we don't always know the impact. And so showing our own humanness and that, we're people too, and connecting to other people on that human level really just, it means so much to people.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you, Emily Walsh, for spending your afternoon with us today. Thank you, folks, for coming to the presentation. We hope that you'll join us for tomorrow's presentation and into next week. Have a wonderful evening. Take care and be well.